in-house technical session titled Why West Asia Matters. The session is chaired by Professor Sameena Hameed. Professor Hameed teaches and researches at the Gulf Studies Program Center for West Asian Studies, SIS. She specializes in West Asian economies and issues of development. Her areas of interest are West Asian economy, globalization and development issues, energy security, and India's economic relations with West Asia. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nivedita. I hope that's your name. Oh, good. I tend to mix my daughter's names also, so pardon me for that. Good afternoon, all of you here. It's really an incredible opportunity to participate with my colleagues at this prestigious Kunzru Memorial Lecture, and many thanks to Professor Preeti and her team for giving us this platform, and many thanks to our Dean Sir, Professor Mattu, for being so personally invested in this lecture series through his time and energy, and thus imparting a flair of festivity. I've been breaking my head how to introduce West Asia to you. Sitting at the crossroads of the three continents, no other region has a geography which has such a profound impact on global trade flows since time immemorial, and still going on. Remember all the attacks in the Red Sea. No other region's resources have been able to shape the cycles of global economy. Look at the cycles of global booms and bust. They always seem to follow a pattern of oil prices. No other region's affair has been made more complex by man and God, if I can say alike. Don't forget the less than 1 square kilometer of land in a place called Jerusalem, contested hotly by 3 Abrahamic faiths. No other region has seen such a massive transformation thanks to its massive oil resources, thanks to the compelling logic of its youthful, educated, but unfortunately largely unemployed demography. And therefore it's still a land of Aladdin's magic carpet and the magic lamp. Because things would happen when you least expect them to happen. To unravel this complexity and the contradictions of the region called West Asia, and we fondly call it our region for good reasons, as India considers it to be its extended neighborhood, and parts of this region like Dubai and Oman are far closer to India, to Delhi, than its other parts of its own country. To unpack all these complexities and contradictions, I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Muddassir Quamar, Dr. Jajati K. Pattnaik, and Dr. Vrushal Ghoble. Dr. Muddassir Quamar specializes in the politics and society of the region. He is an Arabist. He will unpack to you why peace is so elusive, why conflicts are so enduring. Let me situate yourself in a room where you're trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle. I'm sure we have all solved jigsaw puzzle. Imagine each pieces that you pick up keep changing its shape. A new one keeps popping up. A perfect script for a nightmare? Over to you, Dr. Muddassir.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, the school, for organizing such a, important event. It's indeed an honor to be speaking at this Kunzru Memorial Lectures. Dean, Professor Sani, Professor Preeti Singh, and the organizing team. As the chair pointed out, that it is indeed a jigsaw puzzle. Why there is no peace in the West Asia region, and why there are conflicts that endure. If you actually, the question as to why West Asia matter, the simplest way to explain that would be maybe give you two dozen terms: terrorism, connectivity, energy, international trade, maritime trade, choke points, and you name it. There would be perhaps more than 2 dozen. And everything matters. But when it comes to the West Asian region, one of the issues that have preoccupied the region, that has perhaps also defined the region for long, is conflicts. If you ask anybody in the room, the first thing, West Asia, perhaps the first thing that comes to mind is conflict. And this is not something new. This has happened for the last few decades, since Second World War, or even before. So why is it that this region is, and this is not entirely incorrect. I mean, you have all kind of conflicts. You have, the current conflagration between Israel and Hamas, that conflict that has been going on since 1948. And then you have civil wars, rebellions, revolutions, and whatnot. What does it, how to explain this? Why is it that this region has not been able to, come out of the cycle of conflicts? Scholars have given many explanations. One of the very easy explanation is that history. Historically, this region has been conflict. It's a legacy of the Ottoman Empire. It declined, and then the region became, there were artificial states that came up, and they have been fighting since then. There is no way out. Or you have the other explanation that is often, given as to this is a colonial legacy. It's the external interventions that have created these conflicts. The British and the French and the Italians from, in West Asia, Egypt, Syria, Levant, Africa, North Africa, Algeria, Libya. And then, do these explanations fully, explain, especially when we are way past the situation? There are also recent explanations that have come up which say that perhaps the only way to explain these conflicts in the region is sectarianism. There are different sects, and it's not just about the Shia-Sunni divide, the major sects, but so many other, people resorting to going back to their primordial identities. The Turks and the Kurds are fighting, the Arabs and the Persians are fighting, the Muslims and the Jews are fighting, so on and so forth. So sectarianism perhaps is one of the framework that explains the conflicts in the region. While all these three do explain some aspects of the conflicts, they do not necessarily explain why do conflicts endure in the region. Why is it that there is no exit out of these conflicts? I'll give you 5 points. We'll discuss it maybe during question answer. First and foremost, and this is something which, I'm putting it across more as a, to generate a debate, to generate a conversation. First and foremost, the lack of democratization. If you look at the region, every country in the region, there is a democratic deficit that they suffer from. Power remains concentrated among a select few, whether they are hereditary monarchies, whether they are republics or revolutionary states, or they have some form of election. For example, in obviously Israel, you have elections, regular elections. Some form of election is there in Iran, Turkey as well. But if you look at in terms of, transition of power or in terms of social mobility, that doesn't happen. So the concentration of power among a select few is a major impeding factor that has led to the enduring conflict in the region. Secondly, the persistent inequalities in the region. Now, whether it is the inequality in terms of distribution of resources among different sections of society, within the country or as a region, in the region as a whole, or in terms of inequality in dispersal of justice. The question of justice becomes very prominent. If you remember, if you go back, the 2010-11 Arab uprisings, one of the most important issue that was raised in the slogans was Adala, justice. Everybody was talking about justice. They were also talking about Karama, dignity. But primarily, the inability of the states and the societies to have equal dispersal of justice. That has led to a situation where these conflicts persist. And we can discuss any of these conflicts specifically, since we are looking at in general as a whole region. So this is one of the major factors. Thirdly, the issue of weak states, or you can also say failed states. States that have weakened, the ability to control, or their question of legitimacy, their legitimacy in the eyes of the people, it has weakened. In some cases, it has completely disappeared. Or the ability to exert force, that has also been compromised. If you actually, again, going back to the Arab uprisings and even before, if you look at the region, in most cases, most countries, you have non-state actors that have replaced the functions of the state, whether in terms of distribution of services, amenities, welfare, and so on, or in terms of use of force. So you have armed non-state actors in almost every country in the region. And then the disregard, persistent, consistent disregard for rights and freedoms. In the rights, in the sense whether you talk about women's rights. Iran, we have seen since September 2022, there were protests in Iran because of the killing of Mahsa Amini, and similar problems have been there in other parts of the region. Or you talk about the rights of minorities. We have seen what happened in Iraq during the surge of rise of ISIS against Yazidis, and the forced migration of many of the other minority communities from different parts of the region, from different countries in the region. Also, rights, freedom of expression or freedom of worship. Most of these things which are otherwise considered as, normal, given in democratic societies or in, post-colonial states, it's largely absent in the West Asia region. And finally, the inability of different actors in the region to resolve differences without resorting to violence. Differences can be there in any society, any place, any region. There would be differences in this room, but there would be discussion, there would be negotiations, there would be debates, and then there might not be a consensus, there might still be divergence, but issues will be resolved based on discussions and debate. In West Asia region, issues are not resolved through debates, discussion, dialogue. They are resolved by gun. And that is, I think, if one looks at the region as a whole, and if we try to explain why there are persistent, enduring, protracted conflicts in the region, perhaps these 5 points, these 5 factors, of these 5 aspects will explain most of the conflicts in the region. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muddassir, for laying the basic template of the conflicts that affects our region. Now I zoom into other aspects of the region where a lot of communications and collaborations are taking place. Dr. Vrushal will throw lights on some of that.
Since we have 10 or 12 minutes or so at our disposal, I'll try to focus on two important aspects. The first being the geopolitical shifts from a historical layout as to why West Asia is important in international relations. And then I'll try to focus myself on the connectivity aspect or the important corridors that are there in the region. The first important aspect that I would like to focus is the if we look at the map of contemporary West Asia, it lies at the center of us and the European countries. So which means that it lies, when I say us, it means Asia per se, right? So when it lies at the center, it becomes very important that the European countries don't bypass it. Rather, they would take an opportunity and enter into the region for variety of reasons: resources, interventions, invasions, so on and so forth. So this one important thing, along with the human resource that they found in the region, mineral resources that came from the Earth's crust, I think that became one of the fundamental pillars for the growth of the Western economies in the years to come. So the first important aspect that I would like to highlight here is the resource base, be it human resource or important minerals, that led to the prosperity of the Western world. Coming immediately after that, you looked at we have to look at the globalization and the global economic interaction with West Asia region, in terms of technological layout, in terms of technological explosion into the region, with the formation of oil resources or the finding of oil resources in 1908. So technological explosion. At the same time, the skill base that was to be grown within the region was these were again the fundamental pillars of the growth of modern day West Asia. The third important factor, which I feel again is important, is the growth of regional organizations. Now, the growth of regional organizations, for example, the Gulf Cooperation Council formed in 1908, became an integral part of the growth of the region. Why? Because primarily the threat perceived by or coming from the Iranian Revolution of 1979 that laid the founding pillars for the growth of the GCC or the Gulf Cooperation Council. Eventually, we also find that this space has been taken over by the political security as well as economic security. So again, from social perspective, from political perspective, and from economic perspective, GCC laid its foundations. Another important geopolitical shift that we are finding in the region today is immense dissatisfaction amongst the people. And this dissatisfaction was for a variety of reasons. One of the prime example is the Arab uprisings of 2011. Now, this dissatisfaction that was laid by the people was for a variety of reasons. It may be corruption, you talk about inflation, you talk about human rights issues, women's rights, so on and so forth. But the most important factor that the region or society in general faced was inflation. People are not much concerned about the salaries, but they are concerned about the overall growth of or the rising prices of commodities or products outside in the market. So that became the fundamental issue where the people came on the streets and shouted slogans against the regimes. The last, again an important factor, all of these factors which I have spoken about in last 2-3 minutes, it laid basic foundation that for the strengthening of securitization of the governance of these regimes, because these regimes became more and more authoritarian in nature, and which again eventually led to its own security. Now, having spoken about the overall West Asia in international affairs, let me come to the second important aspect of my presentation today, which is on the connectivity aspect. Now, there are various types of corridors or different pathways that are being formed. One important pathway could be the Belt and Road Initiative taken up by China. The other one could be INSTC, International North-South Corridor, or even for that matter, IMEC, or India Middle East Economic Corridor. Now, all of these corridors, all of these projects are transnational corridors, and they are basically for to facilitate the economic dimension of these countries. Having spoken about these different corridors, let us try to understand that what challenges these corridors face. The first important challenge that I feel that the corridors are facing today is the threats emanating from the regional conflicts. The best example in this regards is Israel-Hamas conflict. One rocket launcher and the entire infrastructure could be devastated. So it brings immense pressure on these countries whether to invest in billions of dollars or no in these projects. The second important factor, which again is related, is the economic viability of these projects. For example, a classic example in this regards could be the IPI pipeline project, which hit a roadblock because of a variety of reasons. At the same time, the returns of investments by various countries that are involved, are they going to be equitable returns? Are there going to be equitable gains by the different countries that are involved in these projects? There is South within Global South, which is not going to benefit that much as compared to the Global North economies. The next important factor or hurdle which I see in these corridors is the new corridors which are coming up are threatening the traditional age-old structures or age-old corridors. A classic example would be the International North-South Corridor. Now, if we look at the map, or if we look at the map which is there on the slide, here it's initiated from India. But if we look at this, this is the traditional route. This is Bab el-Mandab forming into the Red Sea. This is the Suez Canal, and then it enters into the Mediterranean Sea. And all the way long, it's such a long route which involves Russia and then the European countries as well. But if we take this shorter route, which is from India, Iran, Central Asia, Russia, and then ultimately it moves into the European countries, this is going to be problematic for the traditional routes because Suez Canal is also involved. These transit nations or these transit points are major revenue generating points for economies such as Egypt. The last but the most important factor, which I feel is again an important challenge, is the age-old infrastructure in terms of cables and pipeline networks. They need regular maintenance from time to time. Many a times, the people who are involved in the repairs of these pipelines and cable networks, they end up in bigger tragedy. So. These are some of the challenges which I feel. I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vrushal, for shaping in the region.
Thank you, Chair. The organizing team, the Dean of the School of International Studies. Actually, it is high time to shift from the conflict-ridden region to the cooperation-oriented space. Donald Trump's overtures, particularly in the context of recent days, has raised certain questions in the international community. Will there be a Thucydides trap? Will there be a Kindleberger trap? Will there be disruption of the global order? But I take a positive note. I look West Asia in the lens of peaceful coexistence framework. And two important developments, particularly in the first 2020 scenario, actually changed the narratives. The first narrative in the context is the Abraham Accord 2020, which was signed between Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. This actually changed the geopolitical narrative and created new geopolitical dynamics in the region. It also departed from the old age idea or Arab consensus that the normalization of relations of Israel with the Arab states, it's only possible if the Palestinian conflict is resolved. The second narrative is when the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, was approached in 2013, and China tried to penetrate the region through its land and MSR, Maritime Silk Road Corridor, the India, Middle East, West Asia Corridor, and at the same time, China tried to invest in maximum possible terms in railways, portways, and roadways, and IT infrastructure. And its main motive was to reduce the Western dependency, and it created another geopolitical narrative. So in this context, to what extent this peaceful coexistence model will be fruitful or applicable? To me, there are three, four important factors I would like to cite. The first one is West Asia is the hub of global trade. If you look at it, since millennia, the spice route, the Silk Road, they have been actually sustaining the trade, and West Asia is the key connectivity point. At the present moment, 12% of the global trade, it passes through the Suez Canal. And if we really connect the region, then to me, I make India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, INSTC, and two other corridors which personally visited Asian Highway 1 and 2. They are really useful in connecting the region, particularly India, West Asia, and Europe. Of course, there are other possibilities we can think of, ITEC and others. The second one is about the resource-prone region. West Asia has around 48% of the oil and 40% of the gas reserves. That is the region, it gives immense importance in the geoeconomics of the region. Because in the 21st century, geoeconomics is preceding over geopolitics. Third one is the hub of internet. Most of the international cables, FLAC, Southeast Asia, West Europe cables, and Q2, most of the international cables, they pass through Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea, and Suez Canal corridor. And Suez Canal corridor particularly controls 30% of the global internet traffic. You can imagine if this corridor is blocked, that would give a great challenge to the sustainability of the global economy. So, in what way we can think of cooperation? Because this region is very vital for all of us. If we really understand the rentier states of West Asia, there are different kinds of rentier states. One is the external rent we are receiving from the natural resources like oil and gas. There are other aid rentier states like Egypt and Jordan. Most of the Gulf states, they deconstruct the rentier paradigm in order to show a sustainable economic development model. And in this regard, Saudi Arabia, particularly Vision 2030, Kuwait Vision 2030, Qatar Vision 2030, Oman Vision 2040, UAE, Dubai, or Abu Dhabi Vision 2035, they actually march towards their own forms of development. Certain commonalities in what I find in my studies and visions, certain parameters you find here is, first one I think is economic diversification, then RIE, research, innovation and entrepreneurship, robust ecosystem, sustainability, renewable energy, then artificial intelligence and creation of smart cities and cultural development in the terms of reviving the great civilizational milieux. So if you dissect the intricacies of these visions, particularly in the context of the GCC states, I think they can set the examples in the context of West Asia. There are critical technologies, particularly in the emerging technologies in the Gulf today. Most of the global companies, be it Google, Microsoft, Huawei, and Ajit families, particularly Wipro, they're all involved in the most of the Gulf states to share their expertise in the emerging technologies in developing smart cities and e-commerce and insurtech companies. Second one is about particularly the food sector. In the wake of Russia-Ukraine war, the food supply chain is dismantled. When the food supply chain is dismantled, as you know that Gulf states are food deficient states. Now, the Gulf states are investing in the arable lands of the Nile River basin, particularly Tanzania, Kenya, Sudan, and Eritrea and others. And there is a possibility of cooperation in the food sector because India has the best of the agricultural know-how. At the same time, Gulf states have capital and the African states, they have arable land. So that is a kind of triangulation. This is a kind of growth triangle. If you understand the Shijori growth triangle and others, a growth triangle can be merged through the amalgamation of technology, finance, and the arable land. And Gulf provides the best example of that in the sense how they are doing it. The second one is water. We know that if you see the Gulf water system, there are certain states like Turkey, Syria, Iraq, they have water supply because of Tigris and Euphrates river system. But there are Gulf states which have abysmally poor in terms of water supply. Certain states like Yemen and Jordan also, they have less than 500 cubic meters of water per person per year. So in this context, there is a possibility of collaboration between Israel and Gulf states because Israel is the leader of particularly the water desalination projects and also recycling technology. And Saudi Arabia is going to emerge as a major player in the water desalination plant in the days ahead. And there is immense possibility of further collaboration with Israel and GCC states so far the water structure or the water scenario is concerned. 1 minute only. So there are other sectors where actually we can have cooperation, particularly in the space and tourism. If you look at the space structure, I'd like to add here is that you know that in Dubai, particularly how India is providing its space infrastructure and know-how to the Gulf states. Particularly recently, you must be knowing that how the UAE's satellite was launched from Sirikota range in India, and how India is also sharing its technological know-how, particularly in the space sector, to the rest of the Gulf states. And there is immense possibility of this collaboration, particularly to assess the disaster management, climate change, and other areas. Last but not the least, tourism has enough potential in this region because the reason is that most of the Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia, is focusing on the pre-Islamic structures like Alula project, and also they're reviving areas like Palmyra, particularly in Syria, and Petra in Jordan, and other areas of Sumerian and particularly Babylon and this Persian and Mesopotamian civilizations. And that is how they are trying to develop in sports, cricket, particularly India and other countries are concerned in various domains. I hope that if for the Gulf states and the West Asian states really they translate their vision and work sincerely in collaboration with Israel, India, China, North America, and it will definitely in the days ahead, I am sure that they will have progress and development. I'm sure this peaceful coexistence model or the framework which I just outlined, that will have a success in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jajati, for spelling out the importance of so many development avenues that could be harnessed in order to mitigate conflicts in the region. I'll just broadly, emphasis on the points the presenters have put forth for you to pose your questions. Dr. Muddassir sort of focused on the importance of how lethal is when diversity sits over disparity. And if you look at the map of the region, you will find some of the resources are with the minorities or the political opponent. So that's the question of failed state. 1/4 of the population of the region are in countries dominated by militias. And then most importantly, the inability of actors to have a conversation, to agree to disagree, to evolve what we call as ethics of disagreement. Dr. Vrushal brought our attention to the strains that is emerging between the states and its population. There's a social contract to take care of the population. That is coming under tremendous strain because of population growth, lack of productive opportunities. And then he threw light on the various corridors and the challenges that are posed to it in terms of geopolitical risk and economic viability. Dr. Jajati examined the possibilities and the practicality, if you may say, of peaceful coexistence, saying that the region faces a whole lot of unconventional security threat as well. So the regimes also face internal pressures as much as external threats, and they're trying to balance. And the Abraham Accord, which changed the narrative, and it is very important to realize that the nations are realizing back in 1970s when the political cost of having relations with Israel was quite high. So you have a whole lot of nations, breaking off relations, including those who are friendly towards Israel. But today the reasons are so compelling that the political cost of not having relations with Israel is also increasing. So the floor is open for comments, questions, and discussions. Yeah, the one in the last, please identify yourself. Yes, please. Please identify the speaker to whom you're addressing the question. Yeah. Oh my God. Sir, how will I manage using so many hands? Yes, please. Please go ahead.
I'm Hadi from Iran, and thank you for invaluable insights. My question is that does India have any plan to counterbalance China in the Persian Gulf region or West Asia? Thank you.
Okay, is there any special speaker you would like to address to, or anybody can? Okay, any plans? Next one? Yeah, 1 minute, I'll come back to you.
Hello sir, myself Abul Kalam, a PhD scholar at the Center for West Asian Studies.
Hey, Abul Kalam, please, I requested him.
Oh, sorry.
He is from our center. Because the time is less, I would prefer to give chance to.
Thanks and all excellent presentations. So I had, hearing Muddassir, I think one of the points was about why conflicts endure. So can, for example, the resource curse can be one of the very strong variables that explains, it's a much more powerful explanation about why what is happening in West Asia. So that's number one. The number two, looking from an Indian diplomacy point of view, I think one of the extremely significant success stories have been India's policy towards West Asia. So what explains that, that despite all what is happening in West Asia, why is India being courted in a big way? So that, and the perennial question, why not Middle East, why West Asia, why do we call it? I am still confused. I asked that as when I was a student in masters, and I still am not able to figure out why exactly are we using West Asia and not Middle East, which is in fact the sort of the larger acceptability globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So actually, I just wanted to follow up what Dr. Jajati has talked about Trump. So, notwithstanding he being a racist or sexist, whatever it is, so when he says that he has to turn the Gaza into a river of Middle East, does he really mean that? Or is it a strategy to push the Arab states to come into a deal? Because I have gone through an argument of Major General S.B. Astana. He says that even Hamas failed to make a unity among the Arab states for the Palestinian cause. So it's sort of, the politics of Trump is sort of aligning with the power conception of Robert Dahl. He has power over B to do something that B would not do otherwise. So what's your thought about it?
So first question, Dr. Vrushal.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. Okay, the first question that came in was on India and China. You know, there is some sense of a confrontation or of sort, because when China decided to develop Gwadar in Pakistan, then we also thought that we need to also venture out in a very proactive manner, and we also looked at Iran and through a Chabar investment, which is around 500 billion. But the problem is that the Biden administration thought that okay, fine, we'll take Chabar out of the sanctions regime. But again, the Trump administration has done the other way around. So he has again put it. So what happens to our investment? This is one facet of to answer your question. The other one is that why do we always have to look at China as a competitor? We are going our own way. This is my take. So we don't have to look at China as a competitor. They are doing what they feel is correct, and we are growing massively in terms of our growth, and that's why precisely we are being also liked by the Western countries. So time and again, our engagement in a much more proactive manner in West Asia, which has not been there earlier, this is where we come into limelight, and this is where I think major countries, they are remembering us, they are talking about us, right? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, resource curse has been, this is a explanation that has been given for long. But I think this do not necessarily completely explains. Look at the Gulf GCC countries. They are more resourceful. They have much more resources, and they have been able to transform. So utilization of resources, the ability to actually take responsibility, take the aspirations of the people into account when you make policies. I think these factors are important. So resource curse, I would again say it's a lazy explanation to say, to give what is happening in West Asia. Sorry to say that. The point about India's West Asia policy, yes. I mean, we can have perhaps a conference on itself, India's West Asia policy. I'll just add to what the Iranian friend was saying. Is India counterbalancing China? Yes, it is doing. Look at I2U2. Look at IMEC. India has joined the Bahrain-based the CSO, the Maritime Command Task Force. So India is doing it. And one of the things, if you look at, for example, what is happening in Indo-Pacific, it's not just about Southeast Asia. It's about the entire Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean region. So Gulf, at some point, the Gulf countries have to, decide as to where they stand on Indo-Pacific. Till now, they don't have to really decide. Why Middle East? Why West Asia? Why not Middle East? I've been asking also this question. At some point of my conversation, my presentation, I was about to say Middle East, and then I restricted myself to West Asia. So I tend to sometimes say Middle East. I prefer Middle East personally, because it is more, in Arabic it's called Ash-Sharq al-Awsat. If you go to any of the Arab countries and say Asia al-Gharbiya, they would say, what kind of bird is this? Which means West Asia in Arabic. They say Ash-Sharq al-Awsat. So even the the Arabs, the Persian, okay, the only thing they agree, the Arabs, the Persian, the Jews, the Israelis, and the Turks, is on Ash-Sharq al-Awsat.
Professor Kumar Swami's old point.
This is the only thing they agree on.
So 25 years.
So, yes, I mean, I prefer it. We know why people in India have for long insisted on West Asia. There's that colonial argument and, Eurocentric argument, but it's fine. I think whether you call it West Asia or Middle East, it doesn't really matter. Just another point, very quickly on Trump's Gaza plan. Yes, he's serious. He's serious and he might actually do it. Thank you.
Yeah, may I just add in the sense Middle East and West Asia? The reason is that often at the global level we use Middle East, but since I think it's a Eurocentric term, as per the most of the scholars agree in the sense it was coined by Alfred Mahan, and generally we discount in that kind of Eurocentric colonial term. That's the reason we use West Asia. And the question regarding Trump's plan, I think it is not possible on the part, I'm guarantee we have in the sense, because it's not possible on the part of Trump to displace a population from a sovereign and territorial. If you look at the statehood, sovereignty and territoriality, population, they're the key factors. So it's not possible, it's rhetoric for political consumption. And it might also lead other Arab players to have alternative plans. Today, I think in Saudi Arabia, I think Arab leaders are meeting under the leadership of the South Prince. They are planning to approve $20 billion reconstructive plan, particularly to develop Gaza. So the concept of reverie of the Middle East is not possible because of the territoriality in population. So the Westphalian Wall order is never possible to change it. Only thing is that there are alternative plans which Trump would be very beneficial in the sense Kushner, the great real estate magnate, he will invest like other real estate players from USA. Trump is also a real estate player. If you have Trump, because they have a lot of investments in the real estate sector. So anyway, Trump will be beneficial in this project. But I don't think Trump's plan of Riviera is possible in this context because of territoriality and population.
But in terms of territoriality and population, the state of Israel was created, which involved crafting out the Ottoman Empire after the Second World War, but what used to be the Ottoman Empire. And so, you have done it in the past. Imperial powers, when they can do it, have done it.
They have done it, but sir, it was recognized by the United Nations as the partition plan. It was approved of the global community. Maybe there are dissensions, but it was approved in the global community, the United Nations. But I think in the present 21st century, it is not possible. I'm sure this Arab plan is an alternative plan, in which Trump would be highly benefited through this.
But that was just an aside. But in terms of the nomenclature. But I mean, as the restructuring committee of the SIS has discovered or realized through its experiences that it's not an easy exercise, but most importantly, its regions are crafted out by as much as by what you see the current state of the world, but by imperial interests or hegemonic powers and the manner in which other states respond to that. In the Ministry of External Affairs, you have West Asia and North Africa. The real question is, why did you leave North Africa to Sub-Saharan Africa? Why did you give up that part of the Arab world to as a nomenclature. It's only West Asian studies now.
Complimented for that in the first session. He said West Asia
So it said it has seceded, at least within the nomenclature. Why didn't you keep WANA? Because MEA has WANA. But this is the British Near East, Middle East, Far East. This is not our Middle East. This is west of India, southeast of India, east of India, and Central Asia. So, if you are looking at it from an Indian point of view, why should we even ever think of Middle East as a category? Even though we might have imbibed it, or all the literature that we read often describes it this way. The second question is, which is fundamental to area studies programs, which it's a genuine question. It's not a rhetorical question. And this is a question which I think Professor Barunsani raised also in one session, which is that is it possible to study the Middle East, West Asia, North Africa without deep familiarity with language? No, the glib answer is, the straightforward answer is no, you can't do it. But given that obviously we have been doing it successfully, since the last generation of scholars left, there is no Persian speaker in the center since Abidi Saab left. Or in Pashto, there's never been a speaker that I know, or Dari or Pashto. He knew Dari or he knew Turkish? No, not Dari or Pashto. I remember that at one stage during the Kargil war, when they were intercepting some of the conversations between the so-called militants and the tops, some people came to the language school and said, we think it might be Pashto because you thought that maybe some of the Afghan Mujahideen had come there. There was no one who could interpret what was being spoken on those intercepts. Yeah, this is the state of languages, but that has improved generally. But can you study, I mean, do you have to be a Lawrence of Arabia to understand the Arab world? Or can you do it as a generalist today, given that AI can usually translate everything for you? This is a genuine scholarly question.
No, so a few things. Yeah, it's on. Language is very important, sir. No, I mean, with due respect to my colleague and friend, language is very important. Yeah, he knows. You need to know the language for understanding the historical analogy of the region. But I think this is the time where we need to go one step further and to analyze the region from a strategic point of view. So my take is language is important. Yeah, language is important, 70%. But the rest, I think 30%, we need a more further analysis, and that's where we are.
It's essential but not sufficient.
It's not sufficient. Yes. Because many times what I've found is language is known by scholars, but in terms of strategy, in terms of understanding or analysis part of it, which is somewhere falling short. We are falling short. I am falling short somewhere. I need to learn more. There was one more question which I would love to talk about, is the resource curse, if you permit. Yes. Yeah. Conflicts. There is a very beautiful work by Gregory Gause the Third, and the work is on it's beyond sectarianism. So he speaks that how the region is moving beyond the sectarian dimensions of Shia Sunni conflict. So I think resource curse is a very that is we have to take. Thank you. I can pass it on to you.
Yeah, maybe we can have a few more quick questions.
Thank you. One, on the nomenclature issue, I just think it's very rude to call somebody a name that they don't call themselves. And I think if the one thing that every single actor and culture in that region agree on is that they address themselves as the Middle East, I think for us to have our own subjective thing about that is problematic. And it has created complications for our diplomacy. But the question I wanted to sort of ask you all was to challenge you a bit, if you'll allow me, on the notion of the region you specialize in being the crossroads. Now, in one way, it's absolutely true. 90% of global oil goes through the 4 choke points of the Indian Ocean. That's true. But in 1980, oil was 50% of all commercial maritime traffic. Today, it's about 25% or 26%. So, in fact, the importance of oil relative to everything else, has been steadily declining. And if you were to look at the world's oceans in terms of trade intensity, the latest data I remember of is about 2020. The Atlantic is now about 20% of global trade. The Pacific is about 60%. The Indian Ocean is about 12%. And the Mediterranean is about 8%. So, I sort of understand why, coming from a West Asian studies tradition, you see it as the crossroads. And I think all of you, including our chair, have mentioned it. But I like to sort of also ask whether we now need to start looking for other factors about after all, we are still addressing the question of why West Asia matters, right? And that's the sort of proposition that you're all defending. So, my suspicion is this crossroads argument may be yesterday's argument, and it's going to be less and less compelling. And particularly, and I'm going to throw in one tiny little point, with global warming, as the Arctic gets navigable, and gets navigable for about, say, 6 months of the year, then that's going to even further reduce the importance of the transit traffic across the Indian Ocean.
Let me since I said that.
Should we take the last round, or
is there any more questions? Quick, one more question we can. Yeah. Because we really don't want to eat away in the time of next. Oh, one there and one last here. Yes, please.
Kind of creating curiosity in me. We have seen recently how China has mediated between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and there was a mediation between Iran and Israel. We have seen the role of USA, China in mediation. Why not India? Why India cannot mediate there? We have listened, Professor, that how India has developed very closer relations between the countries, either it is Iran, either it is Saudi Arabia.
I heard you.
And so, my name is Anurag Dwivedi. I'm a research scholar from CWAS.
Thank you, Anurag. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. My question to oil politics. And as the country is working aggressively, on alternate energy resources, and we know this region holds half of the oil reserve. So how the West Asian geopolitics will take shape in the post-oil politics?
I wish we had a crystal ball. We can't see the present. Future is very murky. Okay, Dr. Jajati, quickly.
Yeah, in the post-oil geopolitics, if you look at the deconstruction of this rentier paradigm which I spoke, actually they are aspiring for solar power and the green hydrogen corridors, because Saudi Arabia, even at Arab Emirates, Bahrain, they're all aspiring to actually diversify the energy from the oil to the non-oil resources. I'm sure in the days ahead you find a lot of change in the energy sector, particularly green energy and the solar energy are concerned. Yeah.
Not within the West Asia, how world will respond, how the rest of the world and the West Asian politics will interact.
Politics will interact.
In the post-oil.
No, that is the reason. You see, in the post-oil scenario, we have a lot of actually collaborative arrangements with the West Asian countries. If you look at artificial intelligence and fintech, insurtech, tourism and sports, health, and different sectors are concerned. We have a lot of collaborations, and I'm sure that will lead to development in the days.
The region has gold, God, a lot of gossip, controversy. So it will keep the world busy.
Three G's.
Dr. Muddassir. Yeah, but we're really running out of time. Maybe we can have it
very quick answers. On language, I would disagree. I would say it is essential. It is actually the reason why, let me, be devil's advocate and say that the answer to the question, why not India? Perhaps that is the reason. No language expertise, no specialization. To your question, sir, I think what you said, the countries have realized. They do recognize, and they're preparing for post-oil economy. So, agree. But there is a momentum towards transformation to a post-oil economy. Thank you.
And just to add to that, this region itself is positioning itself as a hub. Dubai can service within 5 hours 5 to 6 billion of the population of the world. So it is investing in a lot of logistics so that you don't make that kind of a suggestion.
1 million, huh? With a population of 1 million.
So I take this opportunity to thank all of you, to my speakers, to the great audience for their wonderful questions. I'm sorry we could not take many more questions. We can address them on the corridors. Thank you so much.